Okay guys, so we are going to be working with Fireworks today. So you just need to go to Launchpad and click on Fireworks to open it. And you'll see here that mine is already done. This is what yours should look like, but much better than this because everything should be labeled and gorgeous. But this is what your finished product will look like today. Something like this, but better. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is go to File and click on New. And you're going to change the width to 1024 and make sure that the measurement is in pixels. So you just click on that drop down and make sure it's in pixels. And then also make your height 700 pixels. And if for some reason you want the background to be a different color than white, you can click on Custom and change it to a different color. There's a little color wheel here that you can click and drag this up and drag to any color you want. I'm just going to make mine white. And then click OK. And a new one has been created. Okay, so now we have the Fireworks interface up and ready to go. There are a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, there is the menu. There are the menus up here that we won't really mess with very much. Next is the toolbar over here on the left. Again, we're not going to delve too far into any of this. We're just going to do a few tools today. Next is the Properties tab down here at the bottom. Again, we'll use this a few times today, but just make sure it's on the Properties tab, not the Symbol Properties tab. And then we're not going to delve into the Styles tab at all today. We are going to use the Layers palette. If you've ever used Photoshop or InDesign, you might be familiar with layers. If you aren't, that's okay. I'll show you a few things today with the layers. And again, just make sure it's on the Layers tab. Okay. All right, so the first thing that you need to do is create two layers, okay? Actually, you're going to create one. The first thing that we're going to do is rename this layer 1. We're going to rename it, and all you have to do is double click on it, on the name of it, to rename it. And we're going to name it Wireframe Sketch. So just type that in and hit enter. All right, and then we need to create a new layer on top of the Wireframe Sketch layer. So to do that, we're going to click on this little icon down here at the bottom of the Layers palette. It's a folder with a plus sign in it. Just click on that. And it creates a new layer. We need to rename that one as well, so double click on that. And rename this one Wireframe. Renaming layers is really good for organization, and you'll see today we're going to create a ton of layers, so renaming them is really helpful. So from here we're going to import your sketch. So you want to do that on the Wireframe Sketch tab layer. So click on Wireframe Sketch, that layer. You just have to click on the name to make it blue, which means it's selected. And then we're going to go to File and then click on Import. File, Import, and then navigate to the place where you saved your sketch. Mine is on the desktop, so I'm just going to click on that there. But yours might be somewhere else. So just click on that and click on Open. And you'll see that your cursor changes to a little arrow sort of looking thing. What you want to do is put that at the top left corner of your website, your blank website, and just click once. We'll try that again. There we go. Yours will be sized differently. Mine is a small one. We are going to resize it so it fits, but right now mine's pretty small. So we're actually going to resize this in the Properties tab down here at the bottom. What you first need to do is see this little square down here at the bottom. You need to make sure that that's selected so that it should look like this. If I click there, there's a little dot inside it. Make sure it looks like that. That's the Constrain Proportions option. We don't want it to stretch out or anything. So we're going to change the width to 1024 because that's the width of our website. And then press Tab, and you can delete the height because we're going to set that manually. So delete the height. And then on the x-axis, just make sure that's 0, and do the same thing to y. Change that to 0 as well. All right, now you'll see that your sketch should fit the width of the website, but it might not fit the height. Mine doesn't fit the height. So what I need to do is I need to zoom out so I can see how large my website is and how I need to make it fit in the height realm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. So right here is the first tool that we're going to use. It's the magnifying glass tool. So I'm just going to click on that to select it. And if I click once, it's going to zoom in, but I want to zoom out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Option key down, holding the Option key down, and it changes to a minus sign. And I'm just going to click until I can see the bottom of my website, which is right there down at the bottom. Okay, so now I need to go back to the selection tool that I was on before, which is the arrow tool, and you want to click on this one in the top left corner. You can also see that there are keyboard shortcuts to these tools, but we're not going to learn those right now. If you want to know them, ask me and I'll tell you. Alright, so what I need to do is click on the bottom of this blue line right here, this blue line, and just drag it up to where the website ends. And now it fits both width and height. Alright, now I need to zoom back in all the way, and to do that, I'm just going to press the Command key, press and hold it, press and hold the Command key, and press 0. Not O, but 0. And then that brings up my website in full. Okay, so to move these windows, I'm just kind of moving them around a little bit so I can see the whole thing. Alright, so in the instructions about Fireworks, it tells you to lock this layer. You can lock it by just clicking on this little icon next to the wireframe sketch layer. So that way it won't move around and you won't make any changes to it. And that automatically selects the wireframe layer, which is the layer that we're going to build shapes and things like that on. Alright, so the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have guides. We're going to create a bunch of guides to help us when we start creating our shapes. So we're going to go to View, and then click on Guides, or you don't have to click on it, but go to Guides, and then click on Show Guides. And we're going to do the same thing to Smart Guides. Make sure Smart Guides is on. And you can also lock those guides if you'd like, that way you won't move them. And then last thing is turn the rulers on. So just click on Rulers and make sure there's a check mark next to it, and then you have your rulers. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create guides. And like I said, the guides are going to help us when we start actually creating the shapes. So to create a guide, basically, you're going to click anywhere in this ruler area, okay, anywhere in the ruler, and you're going to click and drag, and you see how there's this blue line? That is a guide. And what you want to do is you want to create these guides basically everywhere where you have shapes. And you'll just line it up with the line where the shape ends, the edges of the shapes. And again, this is going to help you when you start creating your shapes because, well, you'll see. So, and it's going to be a rough guide, obviously, because your guide is going to be more accurate than your drawing is. So that's why you have your sketch underneath it so you can see what it looks like, but you'll notice that some of your guides aren't going to line up perfectly, and that's fine because that's why we're making these guides. So I'm just going to put, anywhere I have a vertical line is where I'm putting a vertical guide. And I promise this will help, and it's pretty quick. It's not like a long process. So just going to create all these. So just do this over and over, and if you have a circle, I'm not really sure what you're going to do, to be honest with you. I guess you'll just have to freeform that in the shapes. You can create, a vertical and a horizontal as far as the radius, or not the radius, the diameter and the top of it and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the horizontal lines. I think I got all the vertical lines. You can always go back and add more. I forgot one here. And now I'm going to create horizontal ones. And again, if they don't line up, that's okay. They will line up eventually. I'm doing it for the major lines. I'm not going to do it for those small ones inside that box right there, because I don't think I'll need them as much there. And I'm also not going to do them for the text lines that I created, or that were created on here. I didn't do this sketch. Okay, that's about everything. Wait, I need this one. And yeah, it can get a little bit confusing, but really, thankfully you have that sketch underneath it, so it's not too difficult to see what you're doing. Oh, I need one here. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how to actually draw your shapes. And this is pretty easy, but you do have a lot of options that I want you to be aware of. So the shapes are over here on the left. I'm basically just going to teach you 3 different things. First is the line tool. You can obviously do that to create lines. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Next is the shape tool, and this one's pretty cool because you can click and hold it, and there are a bunch of different shapes that you can use. Primarily, I think a lot of you will use rectangle tool, but you can create circles with the ellipse tool, and I'm going to show you the connector line tool, which is pretty cool. And then last is the text tool, and I'll show you how to use that. Okay, so first I'm just going to start going left to right with my shapes, and I'll go left to right and down, just like you read. So I'm going to click and drag to create this rectangle. And you'll see that it snaps to the guides. When I click and drag, it snaps to it. That's because I chose that option. So I'm just going to let it go, and it creates a rectangle. Now mine is filled with color, and it also has a border. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So first down here in the Properties tab, you'll see that you have options for the fill. This is the fill area. You can click to have no color filled in, but I would pick a color. It can be a solid color, and if you click there, you can pick a color. You can also go to the color wheel and pick a color. It's up to you. I don't really care what color you choose. Pick the colors that you'll actually use in your website, I suggest. I'm just going to make mine white, but yours should have color. Let me go back to that. And then here is where you can add a stroke. Remember, the stupid name for border is stroke. You can click here again and choose a different color. Oops, I want mine to be black. You can also click here and choose a different line. I mean, I don't really care what line you choose, but you can make it rounded, you can make it softer, you can do all kinds of stuff. So just like Muse, you have a lot of options. And then last is the weight of the edge. You can click here and drag it up to make it thicker, drag it down. You can also just enter a number in, and there you go. All right. Next, you're going to add text. Remember, I want you to label your things if it's not obvious what it is, like this is obvious. So all you do is click on the text tool, and just like in Microsoft Word, just like in Muse, you click and drag, and you can create a text box. So this is where the logo is going to be. And you can highlight it and make it bold, you can make it larger, you can make it centered, you can do all the same things that you can do in Microsoft Word, change the font, all that stuff. And here again, if you have a specific font that you want to use, now's the time to show what the fonts are going to look like on your website. If you want to move any elements, like I'm moving this text box, if you want to move anything, you just have to click on the layer in the layer tab over here, and click on the selection tool, and then you can drag it around. Now again, this is where you want to label some of your layers. So I'm going to double click on this and name it logo rectangle. And this can be sort of a pain in the butt because you're going to have so many layers. Every time you create a shape, you have a new layer. But really, if you do it, take the time to label them. It's going to make it a lot easier if you need to move anything. Alright, so that's that. And then also I forgot to say that you can also go back and change anything if you want. Like if I go back to the logo rectangle and I want to add a gradient instead of a solid color, you can do that as well. And again, with gradients, you have a bunch of different options. It tells you what they are. So you can change it to whatever color you want, and you can change it to any kind of gradient if you want. I don't care. This is completely up to you because it's your website. So if I want it with that, I'm going to change that to white. So pretty standard from there. Okay, a couple more things I want to show you before I have you just work on this. I'm going to show you how to save, obviously, and I'm also going to show you a couple of little shortcuts. So first of all, this is where the Twitter, Facebook, and something goes. I'm not sure what that is. It might be Reddit or something. I'm not sure. I'm going to click and drag to create a square here. And I want all these to be the same height and width and all that. So I want them to, they'll differ in color, but I want them to be the same. So what I can do is I can go to the selection tool, and I can hold the option key down and click and drag, and it makes that same shape over again. So click and drag, and it creates that same shape. Okay, and I can go back and change this to, Facebook, change the other one to Twitter, and the other one to Reddit or whatever it is. And I can also change the colors. And these I would want to, to create actual, colors that will actually appear. And then I would put text in there as well, and I would put a border around it. But I'm not going to do that now because it's just waste time. So I would do that there. I'm also going to show you how to use the ellipse tool really quick. Let's pretend that I've created something over this. To use the ellipse tool, all you have to do is, again, click and hold on this, select the ellipse tool, and click and drag, and you have a circle. Really simple. I would move that. And I use the line tools to create the triangle. So you would just go here, and I would change this. Oh, I'm going to change that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a wireframe, so, just a general, that looks really bad, but, you get the point. The last tool that I want to show you is the connector line tool. So I'm going to click on that and drag, or click and go down to the connector line, and I'll show you how this works. Basically, you click, whoa, I messed up, so I just did Command Z on the keyboard to undo it. You can also go to Edit, Undo. I'm just going to click and drag down to create that line. I'm going to click and drag down here. And you can just do this with the line tool, but, I figured why not use the connector line? It's a little bit different. And there's the last one. Now, I want all of these lines to be thicker. Those are really thin lines. So what I want to do is I'm going to click. This last layer is already selected, but I want to make the same changes to all of these layers. So what I can do is just press the Shift key down and click on that layer, and it selects all of those layers. So now I can drag up to make the line thicker on that whole shape. So again, all I did was click on one layer, hold the Shift key down, and click on the last layer in that list. They have to be in a sequential list. I can show you if you need help with anything else other than what I'm telling you here, just let me know. But you can click on other layers by holding the Command key down if they're not in a list. You can do it that way. So you just press the Command key and then click on whichever layers you want to select. Alright, if they're, let me show you one more example, and then you're going to create all your shapes, and then I'll show you how to save. So let's say I want to create, because this area here that I'm selecting, or that I'm about to create a shape over, is supposed to have shading. So let's say I shade it, and now it's covering up all my shapes that I just created. What you can do is in the Layers tab, you can, just like in Word where you select the order of things, that's what you're going to do in the Layers tab. So you can just click on that layer and drag it down in the order until it's behind all of the layers that you just created. Okay, so now that circle is back. I can now create, a square underneath that. Oh, that's a square. So let's say I wanted to create, and this is where my guides are handy again. And I can create my video box and fill it with white. And now it'll be over that. And again, I need to make sure it's under the circle. And this is where, again, creating or renaming your layers will make this more helpful. Because then I would know automatically where my circle is. And there we go. So now it's over it again. This isn't pretty, but I would go back and refine all this because the spacing is obviously off a little bit. So on this, I'm going to make this rectangle smaller. So I just make sure that that rectangle is selected and go back to the selection tool and click and drag down, and I can resize it. And I hate that that's not in the middle, so I would change that too. But you just keep going until you've got all of your shapes created. And so let's pretend we're here. And I've done everything. I've put text everywhere. I haven't put it here, but y'all will. Make sure everything's labeled. Okay. And then what you'll do is yours will look something like this, and you'll still have your sketch in the background. And then if you want to hide your sketch, what you do is you drag down to your wireframe sketch layer. And all you do is click on this little eye tool, and it goes away. So you can't see that layer. And that's it, and that's your wireframe. Again, yours should have text on it to label things and stuff, and it should be colorful and things like that, but I didn't. I'm just showing you how to do it. Okay, now to save it, you'll just go to File, Save As, and like you always do, save it to your desktop, and rename it with your team name or something, somebody in your team. Just rename it right here and name it as main wireframe, because this is your main page. And save it as a PNG, that's totally fine. Alright, and you click Save. And then tomorrow I'm going to show you guys how to actually create links in your wireframe to your content page. And that's it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions or problems.